Hello, my name is Crystal Petry, and you are watching another episode of the Crystal Petry Podcast, Season 4. Sometimes the most powerful callings come from the most unexpected places. Today's guest didn't come from film, television, or production, but from obedience. At 40 years old, after a life changing journey to Israel, he stepped into a God given assignment to create a documentary that explores faith through food, wine, and God. Welcome to the podcast, Zach. How are you?
How you doing, Crystal? Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you so much for being on the show. I cannot wait to hear your story. So, Jack, tell us, where in the world are you?
Well, I live in Austin, Texas, with my four kids, and just outside of Austin in the Hill Country. It's beautiful here.
It is beautiful there. I have been there, and you are correct. Okay, so take us back to the moment. What does a calling from God feel like for you? And I know it's different for everyone, really. So for you, what did that feel like?
Well, I love the word that you used in the opening, which is obedience, and I would say that much like many people. Maybe I shouldn't bring everybody else into it, but I'm probably a petulant child. So I've probably um, turned my face away from and have run the other way, like Jonah, or argued like Moses did. So I can't say that it was immediate obedience, and I would also say that sometimes it's not clear when the Lord asks you to do something. But I would say there were things leading up to. I'll just use the word surrender. How about that?
Hmm.
There was a there was a breaking down, maybe the wrestling with God and the broken hip of Jacob. If we want to think about that story, I would say that's what it looks like. I would say it's wrestling with God, and it's seeking clarity and making sure that you understood. But whenever I did receive the calling that I'm pursuing now with Food, Wine, and God, with the show, it was kind of exasperating. I think I would say it was. I was at the point that I was exasperated, and I heard a clear message, and it was more clear than almost anything that I'd ever heard. And I definitely questioned it, like, you are calling me to do what? That doesn't make sense. But I'm exhausted, and so what do I have to lose to pursue this quest? And it turns out I had a lot to lose, and I have lost a lot in doing it. And but He is remained faithful throughout, which is just surprise. I mean, it's not surprising. I shouldn't say it's surprising. It surprises me
Hmm.
in how the Lord works. I
And
think
I
anybody who's gone through that would say something very similar.
Right. And I definitely want to point out, Zach, that there are so many, I'll use the word examples, but so many examples in the Bible of people going through exactly what you went through, the delayed obedience, the not believing, the not being sure, the questioning. But I mean, in the midst of that, God still remained faithful to that. And they ended up saying yes. Why did you end up saying yes to this? You are not from a media background, from a film background, from a producer background, to my knowledge, but yet you said yes.
I think for two reasons. I would answer the question two ways. One, I already have answered the question, which is I was exasperated.
Hmm.
I just was not understanding where I was supposed to be. But I would also say that there was something about the calling that was um, that was very intimately built into me and who I was and my heart. I, I remember my reaction was I can't imagine you're asking me to do that. I don't understand why, but if there's anything in this world that could dream of doing, it would be this. So it was almost like, I didn't grow up as a kid thinking I wanted to be an actor or I wanted to be on television. I enjoyed and appreciated, and I watched a lot of shows in the 80s and 90s, and thought, oh, it'd be fun to be an actor. But I think I was drawn to the popularity and the fame then, which is much different than where I sit today. But there was just something embedded in my heart whenever I got this clear calling. I was like, that would be a dream. Like, if I could actually do what you're asking me to do, I can't imagine doing something that I would enjoy more for the rest of my life. And so I think it's those two things. It was like I was exhausted or exasperated in trying for, let's just call it 20 to 25 years of my life, that um, in retrospect, looking backwards, doesn't feel like what I was truly called to do. Is like pushing a rock uphill.
Mhm.
And this one feels like, in some ways, just like the joyfulness of, okay, since I used pushing a rock uphill, I'll do one of my favorite sports, which is snowboarding. Like, there's something joyful about sliding down a hill full of snow, and this feels more like that than trying to heavy labor.
Let's talk about this title, Food, Wine, and God. I have two questions here. Number one, how did you come up with that title? And number two, what does each element, food, wine, and God, represent spiritually?
Oh, that's a great question. The first is a longer answer. Food, Wine, and God was a title and actually a website domain that I registered very shortly after leaving Israel the very first time that I visited on my 40th birthday, as you mentioned. I visited Israel. I did the Walk of Jesus tour with the big church group. And the title, and really why I registered that domain in 2017, in December of 2017 exactly, was I left Israel on this big church tour, longing for more. When you go with a big group, you do group things, and you're with a large group. And I didn't travel a lot when I was a kid, but as I got into adulthood and as I got into my professional life, it afforded me the ability to travel mostly for work. But I'd always tack on a day or two at the beginning or end of a work trip, and I'd go explore the city. And especially, I mean, I'd say even in the U.S. I would do that, but especially if I ever got to go international on an international trip. I think my very first international trip, for a private company, I went to Berlin. And of course, Berlin
Wow.
has a ton of history. It was after the wall had fallen. There was an East Berlin and a West Berlin. And, part of the city was brand new and the other part of the city was ancient or historic. And I just remember that just this longing to explore. And, for many years after that, anytime I would travel, I would go and explore. And one of my favorite things is food. And I would always go try to find the hole in the walls. With a big church group in Israel, I didn't have that. Like, we were
Right.
in a hotel conference rooms eating with 100 other people, and we kind of got the same food over and over again. But I knew that there were hidden gems all throughout Israel, and I wanted to go do it. My tour guide at the time, he actually is featured in the pilot episode of the show. Nadav, he's about my age, and I said, Nadav, if I want to go get some like really great food or a Michelin star restaurant or taste some of the wine of Israel, where would I go? And I started doing these little side trips while I was there. I would not eat with the group, and I would just go out, maybe by myself, or me and my uncle who was with me. We'd go find something, that was new and interesting. And so, you asked the question, it's a long answer. I left Israel thinking, what would be cool is if we did a more boutique trip to Israel in search of the best food and wine of the Bible, and kind of had this holy tour. And so I thought that that's what I was going to be doing in 2017. I thought that I'd continue my work path, and once or twice a year I'd take people on tours of an upscale boutique tour of Israel for those who love food and travel and wanted to kind of do the Anthony Bourdain or Rick Steves kind of tour of Israel in a smaller group. That's where the name came from.
Excellent. Okay, and
you asked me what's the meaningful. Look, as I read the Bible, I was pretty late in my life or midlife before I ever read the Bible throughout, and one recurring theme that I saw is how important food and meals and celebrations of life, and even on the other side, fasting was. So to me, I think God loves food. Like, think about the first sacrifices were bringing animals that were slaughtered and put over fire. We just call it a barbecue now, right? And God would even talk about the herbs and the salt that you put on it. I was like,
Yes.
God must have created us to eat, and there must be something common about sharing a meal together, but that God loves about food. So that's where the food comes from. Obviously, wine has its place in the Bible. Some of the religious world doesn't quite buy into that philosophy, but I think wine, you cannot read the Bible and not recognize that wine was a very common and important element, especially in festivals.
His first miracle.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, so I'm trying to figure out the timeline here, Zac. So did you go to Israel first at 40 and then receive the calling from God to do the doc? Or did you have the calling first and then go to Israel?
Right. Great question. It wasn't for 7 years, 2017 to 2023. So I guess 6 years later, that the very specific calling, and the calling wasn't specifically about Israel. It was about doing a show. And so 6 years had passed. There's a lot of time in between. I took a sabbatical in 2022. So 5 years after this visit, I took a sabbatical. I was burnt out of my career and my job, and I'd gone through some hard times in my life. I actually, in that 2022 year, spring of 2022 to spring of 2023, I felt the Lord call me to take a sabbatical and not work, let the fields lie fallow. Of course, that made me nervous to begin with. Fortunately, the Lord had blessed me with enough savings to be able to do that. But I looked at it and I said, well, if I take a sabbatical year, I'm going to go through all of my savings and I'm not going to have anything left. And I hope the Lord rescues me from that. And then I'd spent a lot of time traveling on my sabbatical. I hiked the Camino de Santiago across all of Spain. I'd hiked Machu Picchu in South America, hiked across Costa Rica, Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia. So I'd spent a lot of time traveling and exploring faith. I'd started my Master's of Divinity in that year. That was another calling that I felt called to do. And it was not until a full year, and really until the summer after that year, that I got the very specific calling. In fact, I had run with the bulls in Pamplona, Spain on July 7th, and I was heading back from Pamplona, from Bilbao, Spain, on July 7th of 2023. I had flipped on the entertainment system on the plane on the way back and was just browsing for something to watch. Anthony Bourdain's Parts Unknown showed up, and I'm a fan of food and travel shows, and I turned that on, and it was probably 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I was just thinking about it, and that's when I felt the Spirit say, this is food, wine, and God. And it was one of those moments where I was like, what's food, wine, and God? Like, I kind of had this moment with the Lord of maybe arguing or questioning, and then arguing. You mean it's a show? You want me to do a show? That can't be. I don't have any experience in that. That's not what the 5 years of my career has looked like up to this point. And then it just really became perfectly clear, to me at least, in this moment. And then exasperation, I'm like, but this doesn't make sense, right? It's kind of like Moses saying, well, I'm not good with speech. How am I supposed to tell these people? And that's the way that I felt about it. And I think whatever that time frame was, maybe even flying all the way back, I said, okay, well, if that's true, if this is truly you, Lord, if I'm hearing this from you, then I'm gonna just start waking up every morning and asking you where you want me to go, because I don't know where to go. I don't know who to ask. I don't know the first question or the first person to ask to do this, but I'm gonna wake up every morning and ask you, where do you want me to go? And I'm gonna go there. And that's what I just started doing, because I was at a loss. You want me to do a food and travel show, and that's what you've been preparing me for?
So, for people that are listening and watching right now, can you explain or describe to the best of your ability, how do you know that it was God speaking to you? Because I feel like a lot of people, whether you are a believer of God, whether you're on the fence, whether you're agnostic or atheist, that they don't quite know, is this God speaking to me? So how
Yeah.
were you able to know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, maybe, that this was God speaking to you and directing you?
Yeah, this is a really good question, and I'll give you some answers. I don't know if they're perfect answers or not, because I don't know that there's a secret recipe or a magic recipe. I think the first easiest answer is, if you feel called to do something and you feel strongly about it, I think you need to test it. I think you need to test it against His Word. Is this something that the Lord would ask me to do? Does this align to what we see throughout Scripture in what He asks people to do? Is it moral? Is it abiding with God? Is it does it align to the behaviors and the thing He might ask you to do? That's the first. The second is, I think you have to agree and follow day by day. It's the obedience thing, right? And if He continues to reveal, if He continues to show you the path, I don't think of it as testing the Lord as much as I think of it as making sure that He's leading you to this place that He's shown you. And that's really what how I would describe what ensued in the days and weeks and months after I was shared this vision. And in fact, I want to be careful of our time here, but there were some things. If I recounted the last 3 years of how I've progressed through this, there were lots and lots of doubts. There were lots of doubts. And one of the best examples that I can give you is, in following that direction and pursuing that vision, I went and shot a trailer, a teaser for the show. I thought about the business model and how I would fund it, and I launched a crowdfunding campaign on October 1st of 2023. And the crowdfunding campaign was to fund the pilot of the show, which we were going to shoot in Jerusalem in November of 2023. October 1st, I launched a crowdfunding campaign, sent it out to all my friends, right? One of the things that we as humans have to deal with is ego and pride. And one of my big fears is I would send this crowdfunding campaign to all of my friends, some secular, some, godly, and it would just fall deaf and it would fall short, everything. Yes. Right? So I'm taking a risk and putting myself out there and saying, we're going to go shoot this pilot in November. And what happened 6 days later after I launched the crowdfunding campaign? A war broke out between Israel and Gaza.
No.
And so you don't think I was questioning, did the Lord really tell me to do this? Was this really of him? Like, this was the big thing at the very beginning that I'd spent not too long, right? 2 months pursuing. I was like, oh, this must not be the plan. This must not be it. And what's amazing, we didn't, first of all, I wasn't able to raise the money that I needed to as quickly as I needed to. Second, Jerusalem and Israel was out of the question at that period of time.
Yes.
And I was like, what are you asking me to do, God? What am I doing now? And the coolest thing is what happened over the course of the next 2 years set everything in motion. He introduced me to the right people. I was not ready. I was not ready to shoot the show in November of 2023. But I filmed the pilot in December of 2025, just 3 months ago. And he aligned every piece in a miraculous way that we don't have time in this episode of your show to go through, but it's incredible. So, you've got to test it, and you've got to abide, you've got to be obedient, you've got to continue to ask for direction. And I think that's where the Lord has wanted me on this, is complete dependence on him. Because as of right now, I can tell you the future of Food, Wine, and God, whether it becomes a thing or not, is for me in a posture of complete surrender, and being okay if maybe shooting one episode in Jerusalem was all I was supposed to do. Maybe interacting with people that I've interacted with for the last 3 years was all I was supposed to do. Maybe along the journey, the Lord used me to impact someone else. And there isn't 7 seasons of Food, Wine, and God that I've designed. But also maybe there is. I can tell you that there have been lives touched in just the pursuit of this show up until this point. So I want to believe, and I have to believe, that he continues to call me. But if he shut it down tomorrow and said there's no more Food, Wine, and God, I'd say, okay, well, you know, in surrender, you achieved your purpose, whatever it was. I don't know. And maybe I'll never know. Maybe I interacted with someone in Jerusalem that I have no idea, but was shown the light and love of the gospel that comes to know Christ through it. I don't know.
So you are creating a documentary, Zac, Food, Wine, and God. Who is the first person, who's your first team that you bring on to help you with this vision and this calling from God?
Look, that's been completely organic, asking that question that I asked. The first person that I called on July 8th of 2023
You're
was
so good with dates. My goodness.
Well, listen, when the Lord calls you to do something, you will remember the dates. I'm not good at remembering anything. Most people will tell you that.
Okay.
But I remember these things really perfectly clear. The first person I picked up the phone on July 8th of 2023 was a friend who I went to church with. His name is Billy Cano, and his name's becomes important. Billy, I saw Billy with big, powerful cameras running around church at Lake Hills Church, the same church that I went to Israel with to begin with. And he's the only person that I knew in film and media. And I knew that he knew how to use the camera because all the promo videos and stuff like that, had his name on it. And I didn't call him to ask him to film anything. I called him to ask him what I would need to budget if I wanted to do something like this. I said, I don't know where to begin, Billy. How do I even think about this? How do I budget for it? And it was really interesting because Billy listened to me. He listened to the vision. I guess he heard my excitement. He took it back to his wife, Keely, and called me the next day or 2 days later. And he said, listen, I had a conversation with Keely about this, and I feel prompted to help you. And the first thing we need to do is go film a teaser trailer. And that was early July. By mid-August, we were up in a hill in Austin that looks very much like it could be in Jerusalem, with him and a crew of 3 filming the trailer. And I mean, it just kind of snowballed into that. So um, here's the interesting thing. Billy does a lot of commercial work,
Mm-hmm.
but never shot a show like this.
Wow.
And
Okay.
2 years later, approximately 3 years later, when I was, and I had met a lot of people who could help me along the way. When I
Mm-hmm.
was thinking about who my director would be, I can't tell that full story, but when we got the notice that I was going to be able to go to Israel in December of 2025, let's just call it September. Um, I had met a lot of people who were way more professional and capable and had accolades in the space. And
Mm-hmm.
so you think about that, and you're like, I want the best director of photography. I want the best director. Who would that
Yes.
be? And I went down my list, and I have a lot of names that I've interacted with that have done big, big productions and shows. And this again was the Lord put on my heart. Call Billy. He started with you. He believed in you to begin with. Call Billy. And I was just like, Billy doesn't have the experience of what I'm going to need in Jerusalem. But I was obedient. I called Billy back and I said, can you go to Jerusalem in December? Would you go to Jerusalem in December? And I'm going to tell you, we're in post-production right now. We're in editing. I'm going to tell you, the capture, the video is spectacular and beautiful. And so I just even see the Lord using Billy, right? In the same way he's used people that, maybe wasn't the most talented or wasn't in the right position. And Billy's part of that story as well for me, because it's spectacular. I have pride and ownership in terms of, we all think our baby is beautiful. Truly, we captured something pretty amazing in our pilot episode.
What has been, and maybe Billy is included
By the
in
way,
this.
there are a lot of other people who have helped with the show. So
Oh,
Billy's not, but every other person that has come along on this journey has been a placement by the Lord in my life, for sure.
what has been, would you say, the biggest obstacle that you have faced during filming and production? And what has been the biggest surprise for you during filming and production? And maybe Billy is included in that.
Yeah, there are a lot of things that I could say about the obstacle, but
Mhm.
I think truly the biggest obstacle has been doubt and fear. Like, I don't, I bet you wouldn't expect me to say that, because there are all sorts of things, money and,
Yeah, that's what
timing
I
and
was
all
thinking.
that.
And
That's what I
people.
should be saying. But the truth is doubt and fear. And I think, probably the biggest obstacle in my life has been doubt and fear. Unworthiness.
Mhm.
Unworthiness is a huge one, right? I don't feel worthy to be doing this. I
Wow.
don't know why I'm called to do this. But that's the truth. I don't actually even want to focus or anchor on the things that have gotten in the way,
Mhm.
because all the things that have gotten in the way, or all the things that have been hard. Fundraising sucks. I do not like fundraising. I do not like calling and asking my friends for money, begging for money, trying to get them to believe in my vision so that they will write a check. I could say that's the biggest obstacle. But at the end of the day, the true biggest obstacle is doubt and fear and, you know, uh, believing that I'm adequate or worthy to be involved in this calling at all. Um, what was the second part of the question? What's been the biggest surprise?
Yes.
The biggest surprise, like doubt and fear, on the other side of it, is that I have done a lot of work on the show. I have spent hours and hours and money, real money, on the show. And it doesn't matter, honestly, how much work I've done or how hard I've worked, or, I mean, I guess it matters, but at the end of the day, the things that have fallen into place were not because of me. They
Mhm.
really weren't. It's more of the fact that um, I continued to pursue the Lord and ask Him, and haven't given up. Like, that's my action. This is like faith and grace, right?
Mhm.
At the end of the day, it's not what you do, It's that you are pursuing. And so the surprises have just been Billy, my entire crew, uh, Ash Davison, Josh Young, um, Eric Shannon, all the people who have come into my life accidentally. We were at the right place at the right time, and I met them. I'm thinking about filming that pilot and the story that I had in my mind that we were going to film, and the story that evolved even after I'd landed in Israel and Jerusalem, and what happened on that set. I'll save that all for teasing here, but it all came together. The cast that came together was not something that I wrote down on a piece of paper. The story that we're telling now is not. I mean, it's aligned, but it is not how we wrote the script. And I think you just have to have that level of surrender that allows you to hold things loosely, but in pursuit of, if that matters, if that means anything.
This documentary, Food, Wine, and God, have you figured out who it's for? Has God revealed to you who the audience is for this doc?
Yeah, I mean that was actually really clear from the beginning for me. Um, and my answer is, see if I can articulate it well. My answer is that it's not specifically for the choir. It's for the seeker. It's for the um, it's for the person who is interested in and intrigued, but hasn't surrendered their life.
Okay.
We can get into demographics and audience. I will say this: I think I've been surprised by some of the demographics that turn out to be interested in this, specifically the Gen Zers.
Hmm.
I suspected it was for people my age, people like me, the 35s to, it's a pretty wide gap, right? 35 to 65-year-olds. But I am surprised. I have Gen Z kids. Them and their peers are interested in these sort of things as well. But really, it's not about demographics. It's this is not intended to be a churchy Christian show. It's intended to be, and I get in trouble for this all the time, especially with my family. It's like, Zach, shouldn't God be first, right? In the title, Food, Wine, and God. And I say, look, God is in all caps, so he is the most important character of the show. But in appealing to a broader audience, I want somebody to be intrigued that God is strung together with food and wine. And I want the audience who would be interested in a food and travel show to come along the journey with me and let God be revealed. Right? It's Psalms 34:6, I believe. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Now, it's not that verse. If you look at context, it's not specific to actually eating and drinking food and wine. But I want the audience to taste and see that the Lord is good. I want the audience to see light and life and joy, and what's brought together when you go out and you taste and see the world in a way that reveals the Lord, that reveals light. And so there are shows that have the word God in it that have nothing to do with God.
Songs as well. It's
Sure.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the most recent is Drops of God, which is a television show on Apple TV, which I love, by the way. It's right up my alley. It's the kind of show that I like to watch. And God is revealed. I think God is revealed in almost every story that you tell if you're looking for him. But it's not a Christian show. I think Morgan Freeman did a show called Searching for God, and it was almost the antithesis of
Yes.
that. Right? So that draws a particular audience who's curious, and I want to draw a particular audience who's curious as well.
How has this journey of filming and producing this doc changed your personal relationship with God?
Well, it's strengthened it. It's caused me to trust him more. You know, we don't need to dig into the background or personal story, but
Hmm.
my father left when I was young, and so I have lived with, father abandonment wounds, and I've really started to recognize how what happens to you as a child really affects you as an adult. And when you carry an abandonment wound or a wound from your father like that, it is a straight reflection of how your belief and trust in the Father evolves. And so I would say, I mean, there's a lot more than just this show that's grown my faith and trust, but this is one that if you think about fear and uncertainty and doubt as a believer and how you're grappling with it, this is one that has shown me that um, your father is a good father, and not only has he made you and created you for something very special for such a time as this. He knows what it is. It's built into you from the very beginning. And if you pause, slow down enough, ask him for your purpose, he'll reveal it, and he has something really great for you. And this is something I've had conversations with recently about my kids. Whether it's my daughter wanting to be a cheerleader or a dancer, whether my son wants to be a doctor, um, which both are true. I have 4 kids, so that's 2 of them. Um, I remind them. My daughter didn't make the cheerleading squad last week. It actually happened last week. But giving her the space and the opportunity to know that the Lord has set a purpose in her heart and in her life, and He will reveal it, whether He has yet or not, and to stop and ask, what is my purpose? Where do you want me? And even with me in my life in doing that, I might have something set in my heart that I desire, but the Lord might not desire it for me. And so I've just been really careful on this one because yes, it's a desire, but it's not a desire for self for of self. It's a desire. I mean, look, we can look at things and say that would be fun. And being the executive producer and host of a food and travel show would probably sound fun to a lot of people in this
Yes.
world, right? But I have to hold that loosely because even though it'd be fun, if it's not my calling, then it's not going to happen anyway. So I just have to hold it loosely in a
Mhm.
sense. But asking what your purpose is and hearing from the Lord is a pretty special thing, and being patient and knowing that the Lord's timing is perfect, that He's setting things in motion, and that you are you're a servant.
Mhm. During this process, you have been obedient to the calling of God, Zach, even with your doubts and your confusions, you have still been obedient to Him. What has that obedience cost you, and what has
Mm.
that obedience given you?
Yeah. Um, I even struggle. I even struggle with obedience because, and what I want to convey here is, I am so human and so flawed and so broken and so imperfect, and I think it's important to call that out in terms of obedience. Obedience doesn't mean perfect. Obedience doesn't mean always using the right words or saying the right things or not getting mad or not getting upset or all of those sort of things that we think of. Even the patriarchs, they were obedient. Well, look at all the patriarchs. They all screwed up massively, sometimes many, many times. And that's a lot of what it looks like to be obedient. But to remember what the calling was and, kind of course correct whenever you get off course.
Mhm.
Um, I have been looked at like I'm crazy by several people. Some are close friends, some are family. Mostly your biggest critics are your close friends and your family. I would say it's probably lost me a couple of friends, or at least had some friends, say, I don't know what Zach is doing over there. He's bankrupting himself, and he should just go do. Yeah, I've had a pretty amazing career, and I've made quite a bit of money in that career, but it cost me severely financially, because this 1 year sabbatical that I thought I was going to take turned out to be 4 years of no income, and I was not prepared for
Wow.
that at all. And so it's cost me every dime that I've had, and then some debt. It's been very uncomfortable at times, but the I just have to reflect on, is it Matthew 5, when he talks about, consider the birds of the air and the lilies of the field. He's
Mhm.
always provided exactly what I needed at exactly the right time, and that is expounded, and it's become so real to me that the number of times it makes me laugh, because of my doubt, and because my doubt that I wasn't loved, and then he showed up and shared with me, or gave me what I needed at the right moment.
As we get ready to wrap up, Zach, I have a couple more questions for you. What is your intention, specifically your intention in this space of the documentary, food, wine, and God?
What is my intent? I mean, I want to answer that question that it doesn't really matter what my intent is. But I would rather answer the question, when you turn your face to God, when you turn toward your purpose, you can, in walking in this, you can really only have one intent,
Hmm.
and it's to serve the Lord, and to pursue kingdom. Right? The Lord says, or the prayer says, "Thy will be done, like Thy kingdom come, Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." So I think for the latter part of my life, it's pursuing kingdom and understanding what that means, understanding what does it mean to pursue the kingdom of God. And I don't think it's simply the Great Commission. I think the Great Commission is part of it, but I think it's, as Jesus restates in the Gospels, to love your God with all your heart and mind and soul, and to love others as yourself. And I'm sorry to make it so simple, but I think those are the core tenets of what my purpose and what my intention is. It's to pursue God and to love others. It's I've got nothing. I've got nothing better than that.
I don't think there is anything better than that at all. So, my final question for you: who do you think would make a great guest on the podcast? But you have to help me get them on.
Oh yeah, I think that's easy. I had someone else. I had someone else in mind, and I'm switching it last minute.
Okay.
I am. I really am, because I didn't tell you to begin with. I think um, one of my favorite and greatest personal friends and mentors and coaches,
Hmm.
David Carolyn, and I can definitely get him on the show. David Carolyn does a lot of things. I call him the Joy Doctor, because he has basically a PhD in joy,
Oh, okay.
and he, among other things, runs a coffee distribution called Generous Java, and where he's got a coffee subscription that actually helps feed the homeless on the back end. And he's not far from you. He's just outside of Houston. So I think I would nominate David Carolyn to be your next guest.
Perfect. We would love to have him on.
And selfishly, we have a
Okay.
food, wine, and God blend. I helped him develop the food, wine, and God blend that
Wow.
helps support the show. So maybe a little bit selfish, but that's not the reason I'm nominating him. I just think he's an incredible guy.
I love it. I love it. Zac, I cannot thank you enough for being on this podcast and being so vulnerable. I did not expect that, but you were so vulnerable on this podcast, and it was everything.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for having me, Crystal. Thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. To my community, thank you so much for tuning in and watching. You can get Zac's podcast and all of my other podcasts on YouTube Podcasts as well as Apple Podcasts. And remember, you always have time to listen and learn on the go.